Namaskar, Adab and welcome. I'm Aditya and you're watching The Indian Atheist. The audience question we are considering today is, what would you say to people who want to marry within their own caste because similar culture and traditions are followed in their household? For the sake of completeness, let me first address some of the more common reservations leveled against intercaste marriages. You will find in general that even the most progressive of upper caste people are somewhat touchy when it comes to intercaste marriages. In a one-on-one conversation, it usually doesn't take more than 10 seconds after the subject is broached for them to begin invoking a very special fundamental right. I am, of course, talking about the right to choose a partner for society-approved sexual congress with a lifetime validity, otherwise known as marriage. To these upper caste people who are afraid that we are gunning for their right to choose a partner, lest their future partner accidentally also be upper caste, I want to say, well, relax. I assure you, no one is taking away your precious right. That's absurd and stupid. No one is talking about making intercaste marriages mandatory, or conversely, making marriages within caste illegal. That doesn't mean, however, that we shouldn't encourage intercaste marriages. I'm of the opinion that we should encourage them actively, vigorously, and with all the resources we could muster. Conversely, that also means that we should discourage marriages within caste, of course making sure that any such form of discouragement doesn't amount to infringing on the inalienable right of any individual to choose their partner. We can do that. Promote intercaste marriages and discourage intra-caste marriages without denigrating them. It's not a contradiction, and it is practically possible, but it won't happen unless it's a priority, and sadly it's not a priority. We've become so used to living in a fractured society, it doesn't even occur to us anymore that this is not natural, this is a tyrannical structure, and it's making us look like fools on the international stage. Secondly, people who dread the presumed and completely imaginary violation of their fundamental right to choose don't seem to be perturbed in the slightest by the fact that the same fundamental right is routinely violated with impunity in many cases by arranged marriages within caste, which are the norm in our society, currently clocking at close to 95%. They are an actual real violation of the fundamental right to choose, and as such should invite the same degree of contempt and the same amount of condemnation as that reserved for mandatory intercaste marriages, which, may I remind you again, are a hypothetical, not a reality. Furthermore, marriages within caste are actually in a more severe violation of the fundamental right to choose because they decrease the pool of potential mates at least by a factor of 10, which is a whole order of magnitude less. So all things being equal, the proponents of the fundamental right argument should actually prefer intercaste marriages over intra-caste marriages. Mandatory intercaste marriages are a bad idea, no doubt, but they are better than quasi-mandatory marriages within caste. But again, sit down if you stood up, relax. We're not saying make intercaste marriages mandatory. We're just saying encourage them, at least to a point where they're not a subject of social stigma. We're not saying people must marry intercaste, we're just saying people shouldn't allow themselves to be forced to marry within their caste by their families. Speaking of, a romanticized version of the fundamental right argument proudly declares, you can't decide who to fall in love with. Of course you can't decide who to fall in love with. Your parents decide that, don't they? But either way, we're not talking about love here, we're talking about marriage. Indian arranged marriage in particular. Since when is love a part of that whole thing? And if you do fall in love with your partner, procured from an arranged marriage, well, turns out you can, indeed, decide who to fall in love with. You see, that's the problem with the fundamental right argument. Having your cake and eating it too. Some people are too smart to directly invoke the fundamental right argument. They choose to go about it a different route. They'll say something like, intercaste marriages are okay, but they don't agree with it as a prescription. I suppose these latter ones think that they're being smart in the particular phrasing of their objection, that is, emphasizing on the inefficacy of intercaste marriages as a prescriptive measure to end or annihilate the caste system, which is funny because as far as excuses go, the one involving the fundamental right is actually the smarter one, in my opinion. What does that even mean? I don't agree with it as a prescription. If something alleviates your suffering with minimal side effects, you kind of sort of accept it as a prescription. That's the whole point of a prescription. What kind of sorry-ass objections could possibly be proffered against intercaste marriages as a prescription? When do you go get a prescription? When you're sick. Who do you get it from? An expert, a doctor. Imagine India of 1950. Our society is sick, been sick for ages. Along comes a doctor, an expert of truly universal standing. Erudition personified. His name, Bhimrao. He looks at you, examines you. His diagnosis, a tumor, the size of a fucking country and not the benign kind. Any other doctor would look at the tumor and throw his hands in the air and just give up, but not this one. This one dares to write a prescription. Intercaste marriages. He outlines his reasons for this prescription in the most lucid manner. He urges us to take the medicine knowing full well that we'd resist with all our strength. So he does what any other sane doctor would do. He's counting on us to resist, and so he starts us off with the next best alternative line of treatment. Reservations. It's an expedient option, so we take it. And the society shows a noticeable improvement in its condition within just the first 50 years. Was that hardly a couple of generations? Without reservations, we would have been just another third world country struggling to stand up on its own 2 feet. Cut to 2020, with reservations, at least we're up on our own feet. And though our legs tremble with every step we take, we have begun to walk. We have hope, we have a fighting chance, we have a potential for greatness. The tumor is still there, but some of us are already tired of the treatment. They want to stop it. They don't understand how important it is to nip the tumor in the bud. Even if a tiny piece remains, it can grow back and make us miserable all over again. Meanwhile, the doctor's long passed, but the first line of treatment, the first prescription is still there, lying on the table, but we won't take it. And why? Why? Because culture and traditions got us into this mess. Culture and traditions. Let's talk about that. When we talk about intercaste marriages, we're not talking about marriage between a Kashmiri Pandit and a Somalian pirate. That would be a cultural shock. We're not talking about marriage between a Tamil Brahmin and an Eskimo. That would be a cultural shock. We're not talking about marriage between a Rajput of Amer and a Mughal belonging to a horseman warrior clan from Uzbekistan. This one actually happened. The Rajput princess, Hira Kumari, wrongly named as Jodha by the way by European historians, and the Mughal emperor Jalaluddin Akbar had a son, Prince Salim, who would later rule over India as Emperor Jahangir, ushering in one of the most multi-ethnic and multi-denominational empires the world has ever seen. Jahangir's son, Emperor Shah Jahan, with another Rajput princess, the real Jodhabai, then marries Mumtaz Mahal, a Persian, and builds a tomb to honor her after her death. The Taj Mahal, a breathtakingly beautiful structure that then becomes synonymous with India's pride for centuries. So I guess cultural shocks are sometimes not that bad after all, but still, when we are talking about intercaste marriages, we're not talking about that kind of a cultural shock, are we? We're talking about people living within a few hundred miles of each other at most in a demography that is uniquely blessed with a diverse but cohesive culture. At the dawn of the new millennium, we're talking about people connected by internet and smartphones, most probably sharing a common language, common aspirations, common festivals, common holidays, a common love for cricket, and a common hatred for all things Pakistan. We're talking about people who grew up together, went to schools and colleges together, hit on each other, sat on the same benches, ate together from each other's lunchboxes, played and fought and cried and laughed together. How much closer, how much more integrated do you have to be to share a common culture? So when you speak of cultural differences among people of different castes, you're actually thinking of rituals and mannerisms and dispositions and idiosyncrasies and stereotypes that are supposedly specific to each caste. You're actually hinting towards a measure of compatibility based on caste. I wouldn't go so far as to call it full-on casteism, but there are traces of it in what it suggests. To understand why, apply the same argument of difference of culture and traditions to marital unions between Caucasians and African Americans. Almost instantly, it grates against your ears and comes off as a little bit racist. Casteism is in fact more serious than racism in this context, because the so-called cultural differences alluded to are far more subtle and inconsequential as those that exist between the whites and the blacks, and therefore the argument from compatibility that much more dubious. You'd be surprised to know that the interracial marriage rate in the US is greater than the intercaste marriage rate in India, and it's increasing at a rate that's greater than India's too. And for a country with dreams of becoming a superpower, this should put us all to shame. Because caste is not race. There's absolutely nothing that's real or natural about it. There's only abject ignorance and dark age themes of servitude and dominance. One is of course free to marry within their own caste, even for reasons of caste-based compatibility. Unlike the more direct expressions of casteism, in this case, you're not answerable to anyone for your choice of a partner. No one will send you a show cause notice, but be advised, nonetheless, that if the sole reason you choose to marry within caste is cultural compatibility, not only are you being arrogantly and foolishly supercilious, but you're also knowingly promoting the inbreeding of deleterious ideological positions. The dispositions born to such incestuous unions further perpetuate and consolidate the toxic premise on which rests precariously the whole edifice of caste system. I understand, believe me, the appeal of compatibility, but using caste as a measure of that is silly. That two people belonging to the same caste are culturally compatible, and that therefore their union is more likely to withstand the pressures of matrimony, is a myth on a par with the Loch Ness Monster. Marriage entails living together, constantly, without respite, for decades on end. Those are harsh environs, you know? The only thing that could help a loving relationship survive that is adding more color, more spice, more zing, and not less. The latter amounts to deliberate sabotage. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Dhanyavad. Shukriya.